The Bills get down to the initial 53, so what do the moves say about the current state of the roster? Are there any surprises still to come? And what about the quarterback situation in the AFC East? That's all coming up on this week's edition of the Buffalo Plus Podcast.
Welcome back to the Buffalo Plus channel presented by Connors and Ferris. We are getting ready as the Bills just releasing their cuts to the roster to get down to that initial 53-man roster. Before we start, I do want to say this. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube page. It helps us out so much. But Mike, I want to start with you. We had the Bills cuts coming out. What was your initial reaction to the guys that are no longer right now on this Bills roster?
Yeah, well, initial roster was the perfect way to phrase that, Jenna, because it is a fluid thing to get down to the 53. I try not to overreact to any of the cuts that are made unless it's a veteran guy, certain circumstances where they are moving on from him. I look at it and say there are reasons to make these moves. The practice squad and the fluid movement between the two really has changed a lot in the NFL. Now, that being said, when I look at it, I go, man, they love their defensive line. They love the depth, and they love everything they have at wide receiver. And they're going to fill a third of the roster, at least in this first 53-man, with wide receivers and defensive line. And, Dan, they like those positions, so they're keeping those guys.
Yeah, Sean McDermott said that this was going to be the toughest year he's ever had to do cuts, and that was in part because of the talent that Brandon Beane has built along this roster. And Sean McDermott said, the challenging part of this is to make sure that a good football player doesn't walk out the door. So apparently they just closed the door. Like they didn't even give them an option. We were all thinking that Vernon Butler could be on the way out. We thought a couple other guys, even some wide receivers. We didn't know if Marquez Stevenson, who flashed at times, like you said, at the wide receiver position. They just kept everybody. They are keeping 11 defensive linemen. We thought maybe Efe Abada was on the fringe, or Justin Zimmer, or Harrison Phillips. Nah, just going to keep everybody on the initial roster. I'm just saying, Mike, we were just talking about it off air, that between the 7 wide receivers, we all knew, especially the media members that were there every day at practice, knew that Kumaro wasn't this fluke, this one-day thing. Like, he was legit, and that what he was also bringing on special teams. But between the 7 wide receivers and the 11 defensive linemen, a third of their roster, is tied up in 2 positions. And they only went with 2 quarterbacks, Jenna, right now. Yeah.
I was just shocked because, when you talk a third of the roster, because let's be real, we know that there's so many other positions on the roster that you're like, okay, maybe they want to add a little bit more depth there, or what will they do? But the 11 defensive linemen, I know, like Sean McDermott talks about so much, Leslie Frazier, they like to have that like a hockey shift, like guys constantly coming in and out of the lineup to get good pressure. But Mike, have you seen something like this before?
Yeah, I think they kept 11 last year, and there were weeks where they activated 10 during the year. They're going to use those guys. Now, look, I think Harrison Phillips could be on the IR maybe for the first month. Like, we don't know for sure. And, sometimes they'll do this in order, obviously, as a player they want to keep, in order to increase some roster flexibility. And then you put them on the IR. That can certainly happen. There's still trades that can be made. You keep a player now, you make a deal. I don't know about that at the moment, but I do think there's some roster spots where they could look to add a little depth. I still think they're going to be looking for a veteran corner, a corner who's had a little more playing time in this league. You can never have enough of those. I don't care how many wide receivers you have. Let's be honest. They've got their starters, and you're hoping then with a guy like, Dane Jackson coming in, that type of player. But, the idea is they need, I think, a little more veteran depth at those positions. So in the next 24 to 48 hours, a lot of those things could change. And the injuries to some of the players that they kept opens up the possibility that, now you can put them on that 4-week IR and then bring them back off.
Dan and I were talking yesterday and Dan, you spoke about the fact that corner position is something you're looking at. We know, Levi Wallace dealing with a hip injury, Dane Jackson dealing with a stinger. Now, where do you think that kind of is on Brandon Beane's to-do list?
I think that's the next thing they attack. I think you're starting to see you started to see a lot of, some veteran corners that were released The tough part is that the Bills are 30th in waiver claims, so they don't get the first pick of the litter here as these teams and all these players have to clear waivers. So where it's a cornerback popped up today and I went, oh, he would be a good fit in Buffalo. It's like, yeah, he'd probably be a good fit for 28 other teams that are going to pick ahead of the Bills. So like, again, this is such unusual territory for us, for Bills fans and for the Bills for the last 2 decades, because it's been like, all right, well, like, we're next, so like we're going to get the next waiver claim, the first guy that they want. Like, this is where the coaching, the way that it's constructed, all of those things, we saw it. I mean, we'll get to it, but like you saw how New England makes a big move about all of these things, and whether vaccination status comes into it or not, there are a bunch of things that are all weighing in on that this organization, this McBean era, has never had to deal with.
Yeah.
No. Jenna, I wanted to add, I think Kumaro is the perfect guy to look at and say, this is the difference between being a bad team trying to rebuild and a really good team. That's why you keep Jake Kumaro, in my opinion, watching it. Because if they were building and they were a couple of years away, if this was the 2018 to 19 Bills, I don't think Jake Kumaro is on the roster with these other wide receivers. Now, we know how bad their wide receivers were back then. Yeah. I'm just saying what is he, 30 years old? And he's, never been a highly productive player, though he looks like he can help. I think they're looking at a guy like that and go, when we need you, whether it's 2 games, 4 games, 6 games, 20 plays, whatever it is, we got a guy we have faith in. And that wide receiver room has been susceptible to Dan's point, to some COVID issues. So you're always looking to have those kind of guys. I think that's where it's different, where you're saying we're going to keep a guy like that.
Well, also, guys, don't you think it's telling to the identity that, like, if the Bills say necessarily they only had 5 wide receivers and they ran a lot of 4 wide receiver sets and 2 guys went down, then all of a sudden, like, they're scrambling to kind of see, like, how to continue to run their offense. Yeah. If they only had 7 defensive linemen and 2 went out, then they couldn't shuffle the defensive linemen like they want to. Like, these are emphasis that the Bills have put on point to say, we're going to be a team now that their identity is going to be to get after the quarterback. That's what we're putting pressure on. So we're going to have as many guys to get after the quarterback as possible. And we are now a high-powered offense of throwing the football. And we're going to give Josh as many weapons as they can. If it's 6, if it's 7, it doesn't matter. But we need to have all of these guys ready to go in the cabinet and the break glass in case of emergency. So I think that this organization knows who they are, and what they're doing moving forward is telling to how this roster is constructed today.
I love that, because I when you say it like that, it's like, yeah, this is who this team is. They are going to be throwing the ball a lot. They're going to have those weapons for Josh Allen. Last year, we know they struggled to get more pressure on the quarterback. This year, look, I know last year they obviously had a lot of defensive linemen, but at the same point, they're staking their claim on that, getting after the quarterback and having a lot of weapons for Josh Allen. And it's so cool to see, because I'm like, I know we talk about like how far this team has come under Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, but I feel like a moment like this, and even going into cuts, we really knew what to expect almost, because of the talent at the top of this roster made it a pretty harsh difference between the talent at the bottom of this roster. So for someone like you that's covered the team, what does this mean now? Because the expectations are so high. We already know that, but just the fact of where the Bills are and what these cuts say.
It's interesting because in many circumstances, a team as talented as the Bills would be cutting players that the other teams around the league would be ready to jump and grab. And that's oddly, I don't really see that. I mean, look, Jacob Hollister's been in the NFL. He's a guy who can play tight end. There's teams that really need a lot of help at that position, including the Bills, in my opinion. But, what do we know?
Is Zach Ertz on the Bills yet?
Yeah.
He's on the Eagles 53.
Oh, Mike, shocking.
How does that feel?
Yeah. I still think they were we're going to be at the end of the season.
Okay?
The Eagles are going to be 6-11 and the Bills are going to be, 16-1. And I'm still going to be thinking, I can't believe they don't have Ertz yet on that roster. But this gets to Dan's point about who they are, which is spread them wide and throw the ball all over the place. So they've got the wide receivers. But Jenna, when you're asking about what it says is, we haven't seen this in years where they are. I mean, even the guys predicted, everybody predicted a 53-man roster. What were they off by? A guy or two? Like it really wasn't much because there weren't those moves, and they weren't really outside of, we'll see what happens with Reed Ferguson, where we believe him coming back. You know, we're talking about the long snapper here. There was no veteran. I remember going back years ago when it was a guy like Henry Jones, safety for the Bills, really good player. And boom, he got cut at the end of camp. And you're like, even recently when we had LaShawn McCoy, it's like, wow, McCoy's out. This team didn't cut a guy like that. And everybody they need, for the most part, they kept.
Yeah.
That was part of it too. I think when a lot of people were doing those roster, when they were all breaking down their 53, we were all kind of expecting there to be one of those, like, oh, we're going to be wrong on one of these. Yeah. And that's why I feel like eventually Vernon Butler became everybody picking him. It was like the 12 team to upset the 5 at March Madness. It's like, well, everybody loves this 12. Like Vernon Butler's got to be gone. And then it's like, yeah, of course he stays. Of course. Like the Hollister one's interesting because as of right now, again, we'll keep prefacing this with the initial 53. There's only 2 tight ends on the roster, and that's Dawson Knox and Tommy Sweeney. And Sweeney's battled, obviously, the COVID issue last year, and then he battled a foot injury earlier in camp. He was in a walking boot. So it seems like Hollister could be another one of those guys that as soon as Harrison Phillips or Marquez Stevenson or somebody like that goes on the IR, they could bring him back. But
yeah.
Well, I don't know, because there'll be more tight ends out there now. Right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's part of it.
Yeah.
Well, we always say, like, to come back on the practice squad, which better to be on the practice squad than not on a roster.
Yeah.
But as a veteran on the practice squad, I think you make $14,000. Veteran minimum per week. The veteran minimum, and I don't know if Hollister would have moved up, is at least $38,000. So, yeah, 14 sounds good until you look at against 38. You know, I mean, just to say, well, these guys will come back and they'll be on the practice squad. And some guys are there initially. And then you also have the idea of vested veterans who are not on your roster week 1, because then their salary's guaranteed for the year. You know, a guy like Hollister, I think, would fall into that category. All that stuff can happen. But to Dan's point, you know, they're out there. Somebody else can claim them and sign them as a veteran. Doesn't have to claim them off waivers. And then you see what happens. Now, back to Dan, when you said that about the corners, the waiver process is for the younger players up to a certain amount of time in the league. Veteran guys who get cut, they can sign anywhere. So is Josh Allen
thank you for clarifying for that.
Is Josh Allen like LeBron now, where guys are going to want to sign with him? No, I guess that's Mahomes, right? Mahomes or Brady is LeBron. Mahomes is LeBron. Like Giannis, I guess. And then
Durant,
like
right? Like
Durant, that's a good one. Durant. And then Josh is he's like, he'd be Giannis, but he's got a championship now. So, but I do think there are guys who are going to look around and go, well, I'll go to Buffalo.
Yeah.
They look pretty good.
I like that comparison. That could be an article. That can be a blog topipic. Let's write that one down.
The wheels are spinning. Well, also too, we were talking about this before, Mike, but like with the roster setups and the not new, but the rules with COVID, it makes there have more availability for guys. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Well, I love what they did, and they did it because of COVID last year, but I love the flexibility of the practice squad. I like them. It's basically increased the roster, but you know, the owners are cheap, so they don't want to give these roster spots to guys getting the full salary. So you expand the practice squad, you allow veterans to be on it, pay them a little more, but like I said, 14, not 38 or 40 a week.
Yeah.
And then there's the flexibility to bringing guys up and back, different rules based on if it's COVID protocols or other players per week. You can do it 3 times. And I think that's great. And I think that the NFL needs expanded rosters. You're playing 17 games of a brutal sport. 53 players is not enough.
Yeah.
And so having the ability to bring these guys, and we saw it last year, not even COVID related, where, you know, given week, it's an extra corner, an extra safety, well, I'd say an extra D lineman, but I don't know if they even have any on the roster with all these guys. But I think that's great. And I think this is why, you know, I know somebody worked for the Patriots, and he used to always say to me, their roster's not 53. It's, 65. And then he'd joke and say, then they got a shadow roster of another 8 guys they can find and bring in and still play their system. Well, if you look at a team's roster now, it really is basically 70 guys now. Mm-hmm. And every one of them every one of them has a legitimate shot to play in games this year. It's not like the old days where guys sat on that practice squad. I mean, I guess except for like Christian Wade, who I believe is injured, right?
Yeah,
I think I read where he might be having surgery. I think that's why he
shoulder
wasn't on the
surgery.
cuts. That might be an injury release or IR. I'm not sure what it's going to be. But Dan, I look at it and go, just about anybody on this practice squad, when they get that filled, could be a guy playing during the year.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Antonio Williams is a guy that they're hoping to have back in the practice squad.
Yeah.
Big fan. He was a big fan of the Buffalo Plus. Everybody loved Antonio Williams. They were thinking that he should have started in the playoff game because he didn't, though.
Right.
But I digress. Great guy. He's got a lot going on.
Busy man.
Busy man.
What does he have? He has a NASCAR team
and a e-gaming team,
an e-sport team.
Yep.
Wow.
And then he's an NFL player.
And then he's an NFL player. He's got a couple backups.
He showed enough in those flashes. I think he's on somebody's practice squad. And I think if you look at what the Bills have, I think there's a very good chance he's the guy they bring back.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know there wasn't any surprise cuts for the Bills, but.
Well, wait a minute. The other thing we didn't really mention, and you were going to go into it, is the two quarterbacks.
Oh,
I don't think it's a big surprise that they cut them both to get to the 53. The question is, I don't know what you guys think. Do you think like Jake Fromm will get claimed by anybody?
No.
I don't know.
What has he done? What has Jake Fromm done that anybody that didn't draft him would say, we need to have him on our 53?
Well, here's what I would tell you happens sometimes. A GM somewhere liked him coming out.
Yeah.
And wanted to get him on the roster and now has a shot to grab him. If he doesn't really like one of the younger backups that he has, hey, Josh Rosen's on another team. He's stuck, it looks like. But I think better chance of Fromm to get claimed than Davis Webb.
Yes,
I think, look, what do we know? I think Webb is a lock to be back. I think he'd be on the practice squad and be in that third quarterback. I don't know if they do it with both of them, but I think at least Webb is back.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Jake Fromm is a name that people know. And because of that notoriety, that will stick in the minds of other teams' GMs.
Hey,
but
teams are always looking. I mean, they're always looking. He could be going to Foxborough. What do they have?
What a segue.
Yes.
Okay, because let's talk about it, because Cam Newton being released by the Patriots today. And Mike, I want your opinion, because I figured they would roll with two quarterbacks going into the season. Because in my opinion, like, obviously Mac Jones is now your dude. He's your guy. And like, there just isn't any wiggle room, you know?
I think they want Mac Jones to be the starter. Mm-hmm. I think the COVID stuff had an effect on this. I don't think there's any doubt. I think Cam had an issue last year and had one. They're never going to say that. They don't want to deal with it. Cam is an iconic player in the NFL.
Yeah, MVP.
But he's never had back-to-back winning seasons. He was great in moments. But to me, he's not that guy that on your roster to be the backup and helping out the starter, the young guy. I don't see that as Cam. Cam has been a star. He's always been a star, whether he was playing great or not. That's who he is. And first of all, let's be honest, he's not vaccinated. Now you run that risk. Quarterback room, when he's around, in any other part of it. I don't care what your politics are. Just hold off on your comment. I'm talking about the fact that in this case, it was more of a clerical thing, but we've seen it happen. I just don't think they wanted to deal with it this year. And they're just clearing the decks for Mac Jones, and they're going to let the kid play. And he fits more of what New England seems to want in a quarterback.
Yeah. He fits Josh McDaniels, Belichick, philosophy, scheme, all of those things. A quarterback that's not going to make mistakes. A lot of the talk, I was on the radio somewhere talking about it, that nobody thinks that he's going to be the best quarterback out of this class, but they all say that he's the most NFL ready. And that's kind of a weird thing to be like. He's not going to be the best, but he's the best. He's the most ready to play right now. He looked good in the preseason. He had 10 series. He led to 8 points. And I think, Mike, it is, they won't say it. It'll never come out, but like maybe whispers, but just, it's one thing to have two wide receivers unvaccinated. It is another thing to have your starting quarterback and to live every single day being like, does Cam come in contact with somebody that is positive, and it's spreading like wildfire across the country right now. So like you would have to go to bed every Saturday, Friday and Saturday night praying that nothing happened. And
in
Brandon
that case, it starts on Thursday, right?
Yeah.
It's a minimum of, you would be 5 days, 6 days.
But it could
out?
go up to
5.
it. I mean, he could come in contact with somebody on Saturday and then boom.
That's why Carson Wentz is doing the same thing to the Colts. And they got to be angry there because it's caused them problems. He's going to miss another week now. And again, these are the rules of the league. And Jenna, too, when you asked about that, I really do think it played somewhat in the decision by the Patriots. I think eventually Mac Jones was going to be the starter.
I mean,
and they watched him and they're like, he's ready to go. But Cam as the backup, we're just potentially playing early in the year. I think they just figured, let's move on right now.
My thing was, I thought it could be like a situation we saw in Miami where it's like you have Fitz starting for a couple weeks, then at the bye week or whatever, you switch over to like they did in Miami with Tua. And my thing was, and I actually reminded me a bit of when before Josh Allen was starting and the Bills had Peterman as their starter and they traded away AJ McCarron right before the start of the season. Now, look, here's the thing. If Mac Jones is the guy, like he's going to succeed, like just like what Josh did. But I thought of you're rolling with the rookie. You know what I mean? Like you're going into the season, you're going to roll with those punches. Now, like Dan said, NFL ready, all those things. And he looked decent in the preseason. But as we all know, like preseason football compared to the regular season is quite the difference.
Jenna, the difference, I think those analogies that you were making to where the Bills with Peterman as well as who's the other? Oh, with Miami. I think those examples are perfect. The difference is that those two teams were not expected to win and that they weren't spending big money in the offseason. They were just kind of kicking the can down the road to try and find a winner. That's not what New England does. That is not what Belichick does. They had a losing season. They go out and spend $300 million in free agency. They're not coming here to try and go, 7-10 and be like, that was a good season. We'll build up.
Yeah.
They are gung-ho.
There's a transition period with a rookie quarterback. Like we all, I would say, I mean, other than like Justin Herbert having a great season last year, there are examples of a quarterback, just a rookie guy hitting the ground running. But for the most part, there's going to be ups and downs with a rookie.
Yeah.
So
correct.
you
what
want
I'm
to
saying
win. Of course, it's Belichick, but at the same point, look, and we know Cam was not good last season. I just don't think that gives you anywhere to go. You're in it. So you could think he was ready. I mean, McDermott thought Peterman was ready.
But Jenna,
and look what happened.
No, but Jenna, you're missing the point because it's different when it's Belichick and it's the Patriots. Because guess what? When Brady left, Bill didn't have a plan. Like you saw that happen. So he doesn't care about going all in on a season. And then if it blows up in flames, he'll go draft another quarterback in the first round. Like he'll just do it again. And like, that's where
so I don't get your point then though, because you're saying it's about Bill Belichick and he wants to win and he invested all this money.
Because those teams, that Miami team last season, as well as the Bills that season, were not, they weren't like playoff caliber teams entering the season.
Yeah, no, I get
New
that.
England, right. So I think New England thinks they're a playoff caliber team. So why kick the can down the road for 3 or 4 games with Cam Newton stinking it up, throwing bad passes when you think that that your guy is better, your rookie? He gives you a better chance to win.
You're kind of making 2 different points. I think Jen is saying when you go with a rookie, look what you're getting. But I think the reality is the rookie is probably better to play than Cam. He just is. Because Cam, he really just
rough by the end of last year.
Yeah, last year he was not great, and they want to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands and go. They're not, they don't want to be they can run the ball. They do have some backs.
Yeah, they can.
They've got the tight ends. It's more built for this type of player, and I think that's what they're going to go for. It's kind of fascinating when you look at the division now, where Josh is the old man, and Tua's the guy behind him, right? Mm-hmm, and then you've got these 2 kids. You got the 12-year-old with the Jets, and now you've got Mac Jones walking into the draft. What'd you say? Like the high school principal breaking up a fight, right? When he came in on the draft day. He just fits them. Now, being the most NFL ready, Jenna remembers this. That's what was said about Josh Rosen coming into the NFL. Maybe not the
I'm
most
telling
talented,
you.
but he's the most NFL ready.
That to me says you have a ceiling. Like your ceiling is real short. Yeah, he's the most NFL ready, but there's no like, look, we know Josh Allen was a project and all those things, but that's because he had the arm strength, he had the athletic ability, he had, the rocket arm.
I think this also goes to the point that we talked about identity and what the Bills are and how they are. The Patriots want to play a conservative style, which is what they did when Brady took over.
That's true.
This wasn't going to be flash. It wasn't going to be turnovers. I mean, think about it. The play that Bills fans will always remember from Cam Newton is the fumble, as he's going in to beat the Bills, and Justin Zimmer knocks it out. And that's what you get with Cam Newton. Mike talked about it, inconsistencies. And yes, Jenna, you will have highs and lows with Mac Jones, but I think he's going to hand the ball off 35 times a game. He's going to be fine with punting. Whether you want to talk about the Saban connection with Belichick, all of those things. Also, he was coached by Brian Daboll. I just want to say that. A lot of guys like that. So I just think that he fits them more than they've had other quarterbacks fit them before. This isn't Ryan Mallett. This isn't other guys like that. I'm not saying he's Brady, but he just.
It is something.
You say that, but it's been Brady for so long. We knew Cam Newton wasn't the answer. Well, he was always the bridge.
Yeah. What I was thinking is Brady is the greatest of all time. And basically every other thing New England tried failed. The closest was what? Jimmy G? Would he play 5 games? Ryan Mallett and, they have is that Jared Stidham. And I've been hearing stuff, Dan, out of Foxborough.
About that time. It's about that time.
And Brian Hoyer has played 27 years in Foxborough. They just cut him right away. They're like, Brian Hoyer is likely to be back.
What's Case Keenum doing? What is Case Keenum and how come who's the Chase Daniels? The guys that are just professional backups
money.
That making bank every single year.
Yeah. Well, New England doesn't they don't usually sign those guys because they don't want to pay them. But I also got in trade. I like to trade Eagles guys. I got to trade. You tell me if this works for New England. About Flacco as a backup.
I like that.
Because the Eagles got the mustachioed man himself,
Gardner Minshew,
who I think will easily move past Flacco to the number 2 spot behind another guy that Brian Daboll coached, and Jalen Hurts. I don't know. Flacco just seems to be that kind of guy, get the ball out of his hands. Because by the way, Mac Jones is about as mobile as Joe Flacco. I mean, let's be honest. That dude's not moving. Yeah. He's not going anywhere. They want the ball out of the quarterback's hands. I'm just throwing that one out there for you.
I can't wait to see how this goes. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be something to see. I tell you,
a bunch of my family members are Patriots fans.
Yeah. Well, somebody tweeted today, it's like the Bills have Josh Allen and the division has 3 guys who want to be Josh Allen.
Wow.
And that really is the case.
It's wild when the Bills have the most stable quarterback situation.
Oh, beyond stable. I mean, they have a star now.
Yeah.
And the other teams have, you would say hope. They should all have hope. But hey, by the way, I don't know if you saw the story today that Brian Flores got his team together and made a bit of an impassioned thing to say, Tua's our guy. And, I think he's trying to get the Deshaun Watson talk out of there. Well, first of all, even if they deal for Watson, that's not happening for a while. Yeah. So there's no reason for him to have that leaking into the locker room. But that's going to be fascinating to see how Tua does with this team. Because to Dan's point, Miami thinks they can win big this year. It's going to take a quarter.
They hope they can win big this year.
Yep.
I have a ton of respect for Brian Flores, how he has handled things that could have become locker room killers or locker room cancers. Jenna made the point last year, from going to Fitz to Tua, back to Fitz, all of those things didn't bother the team at all. Like they just went with it. And for people that were like, oh, he's losing the locker room and that, then he's on the field the one time trying to fight the other team and his players are all fired up about it. For him to make that comment again today, because he kind of waffled on it. He waffled on it for the first day when it was brought up about Watson. And the only way to answer that question is to say, no, not at all. And he didn't.
He didn't deny it.
Yeah, but he did say, we want guys of high character. What? That's quite a quote to bring back if you bring in Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Sure.
By the
I'm
way, Brian
surprised he didn't
Flores,
outright deny it.
he does have a losing record, and the Bills did destroy them at the end of the year when they needed a win. So
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
there's a little heat on Brian Flores this year.
Oh.
I like him.
Okay. Dan likes him.
The division
go.
will be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
For
It's going
sure.
to be fun.
Again, I just can't get over that Josh Allen is the oldest quarterback too. Like
The
that's
Holden man.
it. Yeah, he's the old man.
And the richest.
Boy, yeah. Yeah. They're all chasing that. Who's not chasing that? That money?
Oh.
Are you kidding me? The coins?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. All right. Any final thoughts?
I still think there's some moves to be made. I'm really interested to see what they do and what the rest of the division does too, because I think some of that's going to happen, but it's a little more fine tuning. I think some things will come more into picture about the injuries and where they are, but Daboll gets a lot of credit, or excuse me, Bean gets a lot of credit, us giving Daboll credit for the way he drafts, the way he trades, and the way he picks up free agents. Also, the way he uses his roster. And I think he's done a great job with that, having players ready to step in. That comes down to coaching too. So that's why I think the practice squad is a really important part of this franchise.
And to Mike's point, Jen and I talked about it on the newscast the one night when they traded away Daryl Johnson, and everybody's like, well, he's a special teams guy. He was a special teams star, probably the best special teams player. And he was a guy I think a lot of people automatically had on the roster because of hearing what McDermott and Heath Farwell had to say about that. And I thought more about it, and Jen and I kind of came to the point was just the fact that special teams can be coached and taught. Daryl Johnson had never played special teams before he was a rookie. And I think that's McBean putting faith and trust into the coaching staff, into Heath Farwell to say, hey, look, you got to find us another Daryl Johnson. You got to take somebody and coach him up to be another Daryl Johnson. I think that was, and again, they kept 11 defensive linemen. So you got at least a 6th-round pick for your 12th defensive lineman. So it's another nice move by Bean. Yeah. So as long as he doesn't go off to be Wyatt Teller and become an all-pro.
The Wyatt Teller.
Yeah, they could use him right now.
Yeah.
Oof. That Bean, he doesn't know what he's doing.
There's always that one, right? Nobody's perfect, guys. Nobody's perfect.
He's in fact human. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone watching. We do really enjoy getting to do this as we get ready, especially for the regular season that's right around the corner. Mike, will you tell them about our show for Buffalo Plus Live? Yeah, you guys may remember Let's Talk Football Live. Well, we're going all in Buffalo Plus. So it'll be Buffalo Plus Live on Thursday nights. You can see it right here or even pick it up on Facebook. And in Rochester and Buffalo, the show will be on Sunday mornings again at 10:30 on Fox in both channels in both cities. But we know you guys have been checking us out here on YouTube. So go ahead and watch every Thursday night at 7:00, beginning the first night of the regular season when the Patriots that night play against the Cowboys to start things. I said Patriots. I was going to say, I was like, that's thinking of Brady. Yes. When the Bucks play against the Cowboys in the first game of the year. I was going to say, I was like, I thought the Patriots played Miami at home. Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, we will wrap it up there. For Mike Catalana and Dan Fates, I'm Jenny Cottrell. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And be sure to subscribe to the Buffalo Plus channel. And we will catch you next week as the Bills get ready to start their season against the Steelers as football regular season is finally here. Thanks for watching.